Hey, on my Travel Wins podcast, I'm lucky to have Courtney Rich. How are you today, Courtney?
I'm doing so good. Thanks for having me again.
Oh, absolutely. You are my first repeat customer, so I appreciate the additional time you're giving me.
What an honor.
Yeah, it's pretty fun, actually. It's exciting to talk to somebody I already know.
I know, right? Feels like friends are getting back together.
Exactly. Well, you've had quite an exciting time since we last talked. I saw you on Kelly Clarkson's show.
Yes, it's been busy. March was really busy because I was still able to travel. And I was down in LA and I was able to go back to the Kelly Clarkson show and do some visits there. And so luckily we got that in right before shelter in place kind of hit the whole country. And I've been staying in Utah ever since.
So you have the Cake by Courtney.
Yeah.
And that's such a burgeoning business. I was going to ask you, how has the quarantine affected you and the lockdown?
You know, it was interesting to watch kind of all the movement and the changes in the first couple of weeks. So here in Utah, and I think a lot of the country, it was kind of the beginning of March, middle of March, that most people were asked to be in shelter in place. And those first couple of weeks, I kind of thought, all right, well, my stuff is online for the most part.
Sure.
And, people are going to be home. Maybe they're going to want to bake. And so I was really interested in hoping that, things would kind of take off or still stay the same. But the first couple weeks, things dropped for sure. Website traffic and shopping on my shop page for my products. And so I was like, okay, what am I missing here? And it really wasn't about content. It was, I think, a fear factor for consumers all over the country. I mean, if you remember going to the store in March and trying to get you a few things for, your emergency preparedness and just some food storage, things were kind of crazy. It felt weird going to the store and seeing empty shelves and you can't find flour and you couldn't find baking powder. And so
doesn't that seem like forever ago?
It does. Isn't that weird? Like, this has been already the longest year, I think, for everyone. I keep seeing those memes that it was like, oh my gosh, January felt like 5 minutes. March felt like, 5 years. And then April feels like 20 years,
Yeah.
And it does. It feels like a really long time ago. But, so you had this bit of a fear factor at the beginning. And I think people just were so unsure of what was going to happen. Thankfully, we have amazing people in each of our cities that keep stores open, that are working,
sure,
to make sure that people can still go to the grocery store and get these things. And you have suppliers that are like working around the clock to get flour to people. And I think after those first couple weeks, people realized, okay, one, I've got to use some of the stuff that I bought. And two, I'm going to be able to find it. Now, that doesn't go for everywhere. I know I've talked to some people about, just the essentials can still be hard to find in a city like New York or maybe Los Angeles, where cases are so much higher and people are still not going out as much. But after that first couple of weeks, people kind of started to re-engage and they started to settle into the new routine of homeschooling.
Yeah.
And, okay, but what about me? I need to have a little bit of a hobby. So for me, it's been really fun in the last couple, since then. So I would say the last 6 weeks, to really interact with people on social media and just kind of have a new relationship with many people. One that didn't, they followed, but maybe didn't bake. They didn't engage so much. And then finally this, the silver lining of a challenge like this is that it kind of pushed them to try something new. You see a ton of people trying sourdough bread or new hobbies or DIY projects around the house. And, you want to keep yourself busy. You want to keep your mind on positive, happy things when things are uncertain and you're scared and you're nervous. And so baking, I think, definitely does that for a large population. My favorite part is always, and has always been and will always be, the interaction I get to have on social media and hopefully some point back in my classes in person, because it's just like, food is something you can bond over forever.
Totally agree with everything you just said. It's interesting to see how, companies are definitely going to have to make some changes, just how they operate, even office buildings, they're talking about more virtual meetings and virtual working from home, and everything's going to change that way.
It is, and I think something that's big and will never change, and people, I think, realize how important it is right now.
Food
is the human connection. And so how do we keep that going when we can't be in the office every day with people, or maybe moving forward, it's just less time in the office. So how do we make sure we're still connecting and communicating in an effective way? And I think we'll see some cool ways of doing that. I know I'm already, people are doing lives, but just Zoom meetings, and I think even just writing people back personally on Instagram right now.
Yeah.
When I'm able to answer a one-on-one question, it's a great way to connect. I always try to make time in the early morning when I wake up and before I go to bed. And I usually try around lunchtime too to sneak away from my kids and just try to answer DMs so that they are getting like not just a heart I don't want to just like the picture or the comment that they sent me, but I would really like to be able to engage, answer their question, encourage them, and cheer them on the best I can.
It's interesting because I'm on Instagram too. It's so weird to see so many, celebrities at any level now doing so many more lives. I mean, I'll put on my phone and all of a sudden I'll have like 6 different people doing live. Before it was like maybe one, and now it's
No, I know
it's weird.
They never took the time or didn't have the time.
Yeah.
And again, a silver lining is, I thought we would be bored. I thought I'd be sick of my family. And while we all have our moments and, sometimes we feel like we're pulling our hair out, we are doing things that we didn't used to do. And that's like every night we go on a bike ride, or we're playing in the backyard, or we're going on a walk. And before, and life will get back to normal at some point, and they'll be busy again. But I think it puts some perspective on, how much I personally just kind of love the extra time to do some of the things that we weren't doing when everyone was so busy. And I know I was saying the celebrity lives. How great John Krasinski is like doing a whole news show, and he's doing marriages, and he's officiating weddings and hosting graduations and trying to just bring smiles to people's faces. And I think, that's just kind of one of the greatest gifts you can give people right now. Especially I was at the store the other day actually, and wearing my mask, and most people had their masks on. It's not mandatory here in every store. But one of the things I just walked away feeling really sad about was that it was hard to smile at people. I would try, and under my mask, I was smiling, but I'm like, I don't know if they can tell I'm smiling at them. And I really miss the back and forth smiles with someone when you're going down an aisle, or you see someone or it's just a stranger that glances at you, and you can offer them a smile, and all of a sudden that's hidden in that one simple gift that you were able to freely give whenever you wanted to, kind of taken away from you. And that made me sad for a minute. And I hope that we can get back to, smiling at one another.
That's interesting, because I feel the same way. It's like I still take my dog for walks, and, we'll go out and go to stores, and my wife and I were saying the same thing. It's like all you see are the eyes, and you're like, is that person mad at me, or is they happy, or are they paying attention? Or
right?
It's so interesting to be able to just read the eyes. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
So one of the other... I was going to say, one of the other things you started was a podcast, which I'm really happy about.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this has been in the works for a little while, and it just launched at the beginning of May. It's called Courtney Beyond the Cake, because it's actually not much about cake at all. I'm going to keep all the tips, all the recipes on my blog and Instagram. But the podcast, it actually brings my career full circle, because I started out in broadcast journalism, and I always loved telling stories. And then I went on to media consulting, and I traveled the country for over a decade moderating focus groups and interviewing people. And even though it wasn't necessarily a one-on-one interview, or it wasn't about their life, while we were talking about different television shows that we were testing, or talent, or themes on a show, I would get like little nuggets of information from these people about their life. And I would sit there, and after every interview, and I'd be on the plane, and I'd be thinking about these groups and all these different strangers that I met all over the country for, over 10 years. Like, everyone's got a cool story. Everyone's got something behind the face that you see every day. And the more I got to know people, the more groups I did, you just realize that everyone's story matters. And that was just always something that I loved about the job while I was doing that. So when I got approached about doing a podcast and thought about what would I want to share, we do so much in the kitchen on Instagram already and the cakes. I thought, you know what, it's the feeling that I hope people get when they're in the kitchen and when they're learning from me and we're making cake together. The joy, the happiness, the fulfillment, the pride, that they walk away from those moments of learning and creating feeling really good and uplifted. And that's what I want them to feel with podcasts too. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to share stories. I love storytelling, and I really am talking to just everyday people that just have a great story to share, something that we can learn from. And I think that we can really relate to as well, because, it could be you, it could be me, it could be the neighbor down the street, and we're learning from one another. And I think that's very relatable.
Absolutely. Do you think that do you think the podcast will help you get new listeners that you wouldn't have had, or, new fans that wouldn't necessarily want to know about more cakes, i.e. men mainly?
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I would hope so. Because, I do have people on Instagram that follow just for the entertainment of it. We don't really plan to make anything. And they just like to watch cakes being decorated. And that's fun. I like free pictures and fun videos too. But after the first couple episodes aired, and they're out there now, it's been fun to have some people like those people who don't necessarily bake write to me and say, okay, it was fun to follow you, but being able to connect with you on this different level about something totally different is really like next level for me. And, I think that connects us even more because I open up about my history and my why I started to make cakes. And there's always something deeper, and there's always something more meaningful to the choices that we make and the people that we are. And, I open up and share my story in my first episode. And then in my second and third episode, I talk to my mom and dad because they're my heroes. And so Wednesday this week, my episode with my mom came out, but she had quite a journey too, and just this incredible story that made her the woman that she is. And I think so many people will relate to her story and then to my dad's. And then I've got just some really great, interesting people, and I'm excited to share their stories and hopefully, whether people connect to me or the person I'm talking to, I hope they just feel a connection and they feel that light and positivity that we're trying to share.
So how weird was it talking to your parents? Like what?
You know what?
In the sense of it's recorded.
Yeah, but it was so fun. And do you know what I thought too? Is after I recorded it, they told some stories that I actually had not heard before.
Exactly.
And some stories about their parents or about their marriage early on, because they're now divorced. And it was just like this really cool experience where I was so grateful now that I do have it recorded. And I'm like, wait, this is like family history for me. This is genealogy. I should record them again just for my own purposes and ask them questions. My sister listened to it, and there was a story that my mom shared about when she found out she was pregnant with me years ago. And it was a very complicated pregnancy, and the doctors told her to abort the pregnancy. And she was like, wait, what? Like, no, I can't do that. That wasn't even like an option for her. And so she risked her life to have me. And it's a miracle that we were both healthy and we made it through that pregnancy. And my little sister had never heard that story. She's 27 years old.
Wow.
And, so it's just cool to have those moments, even to share with my sister. But, just I think they'll relate to a lot of people out there, the feelings, the emotions, the triumphs, the successes, and the lessons that we learn through our stories and our journey.
I say, I totally agree with you. It's so weird to think that, because both my parents are gone, I wish I would have had the opportunity. And
right.
I think you'll get some of the best moments I've had with my podcast has been having, I had an NFL football player reach out to me about a week after I posted our episode, and he goes, my parents wanted me to thank you. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, they didn't know what struggles I was going through, because he's now no longer an NFL player. He was going right through that time where he was trying to make he was on the New Orleans Saints, and he made the practice squad for the Carolina Panthers, and he was getting picked up by the Seahawks. Didn't know where he was going to be.
Yeah.
And he said his parents listened to the episode, and they, for the first time, kind of really appreciated and understood what he was going through. And I was like, wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Unexpected.
I think it's great when we can share these moments, and sometimes it's easier to do it, on a podcast. It's going to be like published, across the world, rather than sometimes just sitting down with our families and sharing them. But, you got to think of the benefit of many. You hope that it impacts one person.
Yeah.
But most likely it's going to impact, tenfold. And I just hope that we can bring some joy and lightness and inspiration to those who listen. So I'm really excited. I think we're going to have a good year, and I'm really excited that it just kind of brings everything I love all together,
The one thing I wanted to ask you, because I started from scratch when I started my show.
Yeah.
You have a mechanism. How hard was it to add just that extra component of the podcast? Because you already had the Instagram, you had the YouTube, you had so much going on already.
Yeah.
Was it easier? Do you think?
There's still. I have like the audience right on Instagram, but it's still converting them, and we will have our loyalists, and I'm so grateful for my loyalists who, no matter what I do, are supporting me and encouraging me and cheering me on and hoping that it's a success. And those are the ones that I hope, listen the first few episodes and then share it, because not everyone's going to tune in right away. And then you wait for, the secondary audience is waiting for the early adopters to say, hey, you should listen. No, this was really good, and waiting for the reviews. And so I just feel so grateful that I've got a group, a community on Instagram that is so supportive, encouraging, and I really owe it to them, because I think any success from the podcast is going to be because of their support and their word of mouth. And so I really, I hope to see it grow, and I know that if it does, it's really thanks to an awesome community on social media that's supporting me.
That's because you had that. I'll tell you a funny story. I'm now 2 years in. Just recorded. Well, I just posted up my 100th episode. And
congratulations!
Thank you. And I had a friend on Facebook who I've worked with for 10 years, and I post all of my podcast episodes on Facebook, on social media, LinkedIn, all that. He sends me a DM and goes, "Hey, I didn't know you had a podcast." I'm like, what?
Right?
I've only had
I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned too about, any kind of business and social media, but when you are providing information and you are sharing information, I have learned in the last 5 years just of Instagram alone, is that you can really never share it enough. You have to repeat yourself. It's like with kids. You tell them one time, but nope, I got to tell them again and again, because it gets missed and it goes in one ear and out the other. And, I remember you talking about a podcast, but I never tuned in. Okay, now that you said it again, I'm going to listen this time, And so I just keep remembering, okay, even though we've talked about how to get your cake to rise, there are new followers and listeners constantly that we have to remind this information is here, So it will be, for me, kind of a balance of, I have to share this new content I'm putting out for my blog and Instagram and all the baking, but also, hey, I've got this, this whole new road I'm taking, and I've got the podcast, and I want you to be there too. And so, you just hope that, you're providing enough value to those listening and to those following, that your content provides value in their life, that they'll also want to kind of give back to you in terms of support.
I think it's going to be a huge success for you. So,
well, thank you. I'm very excited.
What else do you have coming up for the end of the year, have you totally changed all of your schedules, or are you just leaving it open?
We've changed any kind of like television appearances and my in-person hands-on classes have been postponed. I do those in Salt Lake City, and those are one of my favorite things to do. Even though they're not very big classes, we usually have 16 people, but it's a moment that I can really like face-to-face connect with people, and it's so fun. We have a great time, but those are postponed. I did just launch a second online cake course, which is kind of the next level baking. So now I have 2 classes online that are available for people to purchase and watch whenever they want to. So it's been fun to see people gravitate towards those, try those out, and then say, oh, I watched your first course, I watched the second. I'm getting better. Because there's really no better way to get better at something than to just get hands-on and try it and kind of throw yourself to the sharks and get going
exactly.
And give it a shot. So we've done that. And my products are still available online. We have a new product dropping soon that I'll be announcing. So, we're still, trying to do our best to keep things going as normal as possible. And also just, I think for me, my big thing is making sure that I'm always staying connected to the community and to my followers. And I think it's going to be an interesting rest of the year, but I also feel very optimistic about some of it as well.
I do too. The talk I had with my daughters yesterday was in 2008 when the economy crashed. Everyone at that time was like, "Oh, this is terrible. We'll never come out of it. It's blah blah blah." And we just had the best decade we've had ever. So we'll go through this. We'll get through it, and then we'll come out of it, and everyone will keep moving on. Hopefully.
Yeah, and hopefully with lessons learned.
Sure.
You hope in these kind of moments, and it's like any kind of personal trial that we go through. We may fail at something. We may find something to be hard. It may be challenging. We have, really hard times in life. But the silver lining of all those moments is that there's lessons to be learned and strength to be had, and we can grow from them if we choose to grow from them.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I hope for me, I hope for my family, we can look at this moment, and as hard as it is, and as worrisome and uncertain as it is, what can we hold on to every day that is a constant, in our family? And what are we grateful for at this moment that, may have changed and it's different, but changed for the better, at least right now? And how can we make sure we always continue to keep those positive changes moving forward?
Well, and I think there's going to be so many positives out of this. I mean, people like you were talking about earlier, it's like all of a sudden it gives you a different perspective. This is the most time my wife and I have been together for almost 7 years. And this is the most time I've ever spent at home in one spot, because I'm a traveling sales rep. So I've always been on the road, always. So
and my husband and I, the same thing. Like having Ryan here, I think is not just a game changer for me. I think more so for my kids. I mean, they're still young. They're 11 and 6. And for him to be home at dinner time and to go outside and go for walks and play basketball, or, the boys have been able to go golfing together. I'm like, that wouldn't happen right now if Ryan was still going to the office every day. Those kind of things were not happening. And so I will forever be grateful for the time that my kids have with their dad right now.
And it'll never be like this again. You hope, kind of.
Yeah.
For school and work, and it was kind of the perfect conflux of, it was almost at the end of the school year. Yeah. So it's a longer summer, and who knows what they're going to. I mean, here in Los Angeles, they're talking about starting the next school year up in July. So what they were originally talking about, now they're talking about trying to do all. Who knows? I'll tell you one thing. I'm glad I don't have kids that are school aged.
At the school age.
Wow.
But you know what? We've had our moments, and I think there's been some adjustments for sure.
Oh yeah.
The kids are also so resilient, and I just think about all the kids out there, and school I know is good for them. I'm grateful that we have teachers that work so hard to try to make things as fun and normal as possible with Google Meets and Hangouts right now. And I know they'll do that next year too if we're having to do this. And I'm just grateful that they're really mindful of the kids and their feelings. And, some days are hard, and I've been able to email the teachers and say, do you know what? We're having a hard day. We did not get all the work done. And for them to just say, you know what? I'm so grateful you're trying, and I hope they're reading, and I just hope they're happy and healthy, and, take the day off if you need to. So teachers have been incredible.
Well, and we do, my wife and I, we've definitely had our moments. I mean, it's frustrating. Both of our jobs have been affected by it. Most of our friends, her mom is in the highest risk category. She's 81 with COPD.
Oh, yeah.
And all that stuff kind of weighs on you. My one daughter has asthma, but it's been, I still think my wife kind of started it because she wanted me to get some stuff done around the house. Because all of a sudden my wife's to-do list is getting done. I was always like,
it's amazing when we have a little extra time.
Yeah, slash months.
I didn't think was there before.
Well, I'd always go, I'll get that when I get back from my next trip. I'll do that when I get, the garage, the painting, this, that. Yeah. Now it's like, I guess I got to do it. What else do you have coming up? Anything you want to talk about, or?
Gosh, new podcast episodes drop every Wednesday.
Okay.
So, and they're available on, all platforms. So every Wednesday there's a new episode, and if you subscribe, and most of your listeners know this, it's just going to be sent to their phones. So that's super easy. And we'll probably be working on more, digital content. Right now I'm kind of having fun. I got some vintage cookbooks from a friend from the 1930s and 1940s. And so I've been experimenting with those cakes, and we've been on my Instagram just having fun trying those out, and people are following along. I make it exactly how it is from the vintage cookbook, a 1940s recipe. And then we see how it turns out, and then I make some tweaks to it, and we compare it to my 2020 version of the cake. So
how's that been?
That's kind of been a new fun thing I just started.
That's awesome.
Kind of keep going, I think, throughout the summer, because I just ordered more cookbooks. I'm loving it. I love going through these books, and they're used. They have notes in them.
Yeah.
It's just a fun little time capsule.
I'm going to turn my wife on to that. That's cool. How big are the changes?
I'm not trying to change them too much because I want to keep the authenticity of the original recipe.
Yeah.
But back then, in 1940, they were rationing butter and flour, so they're smaller cakes, which is totally fine for me. But they're using shortening a lot, which is not going to create like a great texture to your cake. So I switch that out with butter sometimes. Just kind of comparing ratios of flour and sugar to make sure it rises the way that it needs to. Yesterday I worked on a chocolate cake. Chocolate can be expensive sometimes. So I added a little bit more, but I found a budget-friendly chocolate cocoa, a cocoa powder that we could incorporate it and just change a few things. So at the end of the day, it still tastes similar to what it was supposed to back then. But just, kind of, I'm just trying to enhance the recipes a bit.
That's pretty cool, though. That's like when we watch old shows, like we were just watching some on the Victorian Tudor era. Yeah. And you're like, it looks so cool on TV and in movies, but you're like, oh, Colin, they didn't brush their teeth. They didn't, they didn't all take showers. It's
kind of a little bit of a history lesson for me each time as I look at a recipe and the name of the recipe, and I do a little research on it. It's really fun. I mean, I just love the whole learning process, and getting my hands dirty is my best way to learn. But it's not just about the ingredients, but truly like the history of it has been really fun as well.
That's cool. So I'll put all the links for the website and everything else, but then I'll make sure to add in the podcast link.
Yeah, the Instagram account and the podcast, and that'll share a ton. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll get people turned on to the pod. It looks cool. I mean, you had the first episode. It looks like it was your host, Courtney Rich, finding joy in the journey.
Yeah.
And then embracing life course corrections with faith and resilience. I mean, those are powerful titles.
Everything will be a little different. Everyone's story is different. And so we'll just, there'll be a different theme each time. And a different interview. And then there may be some more stories from me here and there because I've got a good collection.
That's what you do. Yeah, exactly.
Of some things to share from over the years. So I think it'll be kind of a good compilation of all of it.
Use them if you got them. I can't wait to. I started listening well, I listened to the trailer and then part of the first one. So I'll get through the rest of them.
Well, I hope you enjoy it. Yes.
I used to listen a lot more because I used to drive a lot for my job. So
I know, me too.
So
now I have to go and walk so I can listen to all my podcasts.
Exactly. So,
yeah.
Well, hey, I truly appreciate the extra time. So it was awesome catching up with you.
Thank you.
And,
well, thanks for having me again. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. And best wishes through 2020. And we'll see
Thank you. You too. Stay healthy.
All right. Thanks, Courtney.
Okay. Take care.
Bye-bye.